You know how it feels when the conversation is over, but it doesn't really end. You are already home. There is no sound in the room. But your memory keeps bringing back the sound of your voice, the look on their face, and the pause that lasted half a second too long. You try to sleep, but instead you change the past. You change the words in sentences. You see different things happening. You plan for things that haven't even happened yet. It looks like thinking from the outside. It feels like being alert on the inside. Certain people do this so often that they don't even notice it. They say it's being thorough, being conscious of yourself, and being responsible. Some people call it dramatic, nervous, or too much. They say, just stop thinking about it, as if thought were a switch. But what they don't grasp is that this isn't indulgence. It's patterns some minds are trained to scan. And when that scanning turns inward, it becomes what we call overthinking. The dark psychology of overthinking isn't about intelligence. It isn't about having too many thoughts. It's about what your nervous system learns to expect from the world. There's more going on here than people know. Research in neuroscience reveals that when the brain perceives uncertainty or probable threat, it engages networks linked with prediction and mistake detection. The prefrontal cortex seeks to anticipate outcomes. The amygdala indicates possible danger. In balanced states, this system helps us plan and problem solve. But when uncertainty feels risky rather than neutral, the brain doesn't just plan. It loops. Studies on rumination reveal that the mind keeps returning to unsolved social or emotional difficulties because it believes repetition will eventually bring safety. It treats thought as a rehearsal space. If you study it sufficiently, maybe you won't be taken off guard next time. Maybe you won't be humiliated, rejected, misunderstood. In actual life, that doesn't feel like research findings. It feels like lying in bed with your heart somewhat stiff, repeating a message you sent hours ago. It feels like creating responses to things that haven't been stated. It is like seeking closure from scenarios that are still developing. Overthinking is sometimes considered a detrimental habit, but habits don't often arrive with this much intensity. This is closer to a survival strategy. For many folks, it begins early, not necessarily in spectacular trauma, but in subtle ambiguity, growing up in circumstances where attitudes altered swiftly, where approval felt conditional, where faults had emotional effects. The child's brain adapts by being observant, attuned, hyper-aware of tone and micro-changes. It learns that safety originates from expectancy. If you can think 3 steps ahead, you won't be blindsided. If you can comprehend your own behavior, you can prevent alienation. If you can model every possible situation, you can soften the impact of the worst one. Over time, this attention flows inward. You don't just scan others, you scan yourself. You monitor your words, your expressions, your decisions. You develop an internal surveillance system that runs discreetly in the background of your existence. And because it has helped you escape discomfort before, your brain keeps employing it. There's nothing unreasonable about that. From a nervous system perspective, overthinking is an attempt at regulation. The mind strives to construct assurance when certainty isn't available. It prefers an unpleasant prediction over a blank gap. Ambiguity feels like danger. Analysis feels like control. But here's the conundrum. The precise procedure designed to ensure safety can eventually damage it. The more you examine, the more possible hazards you produce. The brain is skilled at generating scenarios. Give it enough time and it will envision rejection when there is none, conflict when there is serenity, failure where there is only delay. The predictive system doesn't distinguish well between realistic and unlikely when it's driven by concern. So the loop tightens. You think to feel safe. The thinking produces increased uncertainty, which makes you think more. From the outside, it appears like indecision. Internally, it feels like responsibility. What often goes ignored is that overthinking usually coexists with empathy and depth. The same brain that recalls talks is frequently the brain that sees minor deviations in others. The same sensitivity that predicts rejection can also foresee need. There's a reason many overthinkers are seen as thoughtful, considerate, and insightful. The trade-off is tiredness, because constant internal monitoring needs energy. It keeps the body in a mild stress reaction. Cortisol rises moderately, muscles stay somewhat tense. Sleep becomes lighter. Even intervals of repose are rarely vacant, they're laden with mental simulation. And yet defining something as just unhealthy ignores the subtlety. Different nerve systems adapt in different ways. Some externalize stress, some avoid it, some confront it head-on, and some seek within and study. None of these responses is morally superior. There are variances in wiring shaped by experience. Overthinking is not a character fault. It's not evidence that you're weak or insufficient. It's a learned temperament toward uncertainty. The darker side isn't that you think too much. It's that you've come to believe that thinking is the only thing standing between you and chaos. There's a quiet anxiety behind many overthinking patterns. If I stop scanning, something will slide past. If I relax, I'll miss the sign. If I don't psychologically prepare, I won't survive the consequences. But most of the time, the effects being prepared for are emotional, not physical. Disappointment, embarrassment, disconnection, and the mind strives to solve emotional risk with cognitive control. The trouble is that emotions don't react to rehearsal the way physical activities do. You can't totally inoculate yourself from pain by visualizing it in advance. You can't ensure outstanding social performance by scrutinizing every phrase 10 times. Life remains largely unpredictable, no matter how sophisticated the internal model evolves. That knowledge can feel unnerving at first, because if thinking isn't perfect protection, what is? Often, it's tolerance, the ability to experience uncertainty without instantly seeking to erase it. And that capacity develops slowly, usually through experiences of surviving something you once thought you couldn't. Overthinkers generally underestimate this about themselves. They focus on how anxious they feel, not on how much they've already endured. They perceive the loops, not the resilience underneath them. They forget that the very reason their brain fights so hard to defend them is that it learnt that they matter. There is cleverness in that. There is care in that. The objective isn't to silence the mind altogether. That would be another type of control. It's more about noticing the pattern without associating it with identity. Thoughts are strategies, they are not verdicts. You are not broken because your brain learns to anticipate. You are not flawed because your nervous system loves preparedness over surprise. In many respects, your mind is doing exactly what it was trained to do. And sometimes, merely observing that changes the tone of the internal discourse. The next time the repeat starts, there might be a small layer of awareness underlying it. Not judgment, just recognition. This is my brain trying to keep me safe. That awareness doesn't remove the loop immediately, but it softens it. And if this feels similar, if you recognize yourself in the silent scanning and the late-night changes, there's probably more beneath the surface than merely thinking too much. There are patterns about attachment, about control, about sensitivity that relate in ways that are rarely talked about clearly. If this reflection felt personal, there's more to explore about how your mind learns to protect you, and what it might be ready to let go of next.